Hello, welcome. It's midday in the UK. How are you? It's Bullock's Business Banter, 22nd of February. It's Monday, the start of another glorious week. Can you feel it? Can you feel the change? I feel there's going to be a change today. Well, let's get on with the headlines. We're going to talk about it in a minute. So the PM to unveil cautious England lockdown exit plan this afternoon. All schools are expected to reopen on the 8th of March with some outdoor socialising allowed from the 29th. We'll talk about that more in a moment. They wanted to jail a banker. I was that banker. Tom Hayes, jailed for rigging interest rates, tells the BBC fresh evidence will show his conviction was unsafe. The COVID jab impact on serious illness is spectacular. First evidence from the UK's vaccine programme shows a reduction in hospitalisations in Scotland. And airlines ground Boeing 777s after engine failure. Spectacular engine failure, which we've got on video to show you in a bit. United Airlines and Japan. Two main airlines have already suspended 56 planes with the same engine. Let's see who we have in today. I think it's just actually me and Andy. Hello.
Morning. Morning.
How are you, sir?
Fine, you?
Yes, I'm all good. It's just us two at the moment.
Oh, crikey.
Dad's all right. It's fine. Just like a Monday night. The old Monday nights. Remember those?
Oh, yes.
So it's going to be good today, isn't it? Do you think? The announcements?
Well, I've got news. It's good. It's good, but, unlike Scotland, Wales, and I think Northern Ireland, they are phasing the reopening of school, starting with primary first, and I just think that going full out altogether could be a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Let me just read. Let me just keep everybody up to date. This is the actual. I never understand how this works because there's an announcement at 3:30 in the Commons, and then there's an announcement at 7:00 tonight on BBC and ITV, obviously. But they've already got most of the details out already. This is insane. This is. So the first stage of easing will be split into two parts. It says here from the 8th of March, all schools will reopen with outdoor after-school sports and activities allowed. Recreation in a public space, such as a park, will be allowed between two people, meaning they will be able to sit down, have a coffee, a drink or a picnic. And then from the 29th of March, outdoor gatherings of either 6 people or 2 households will be allowed. It is understood they will include gatherings in private gardens. Outdoor sports facilities such as tennis or basketball courts will reopen, and organised adult and children's sports such as grassroots football will also return. So you feel that schools, well, I feel the same way actually, but you feel that the schools coming back in one go, not a good idea.
No, because if you followed, look, I'll quote the famous government line. We follow the science and the data. Yeah. If they followed the science, and there is a bit of a dispute with Chris Whitty and the government at the moment about what he has been referred to as a big bang opening. If you look at what happened in September, schools and universities went back, and it ran rife. And then at the same time, they discovered in September last year the now called Kent variant, right? Yeah. And it was allowed to run rife throughout the UK. Again, not too little, too late. Acting, as my saying I've developed, dither and delay equals deaths. And unfortunately,
that's good.
That is sad but true. We are now at 120,000 dead. And I just remind the viewers that in the whole of 6 years of World War II, only 70,000 civilians were killed. And that's when people were trying to actually bomb us. So, as I've said previously, they've made the mistake of not treating this like a war scenario. Instead, they've treated it as some sort of Conservative Party exercise. And they haven't really moved quickly enough. Now we're going into this same scenario as last September with all the schools. I don't know about universities. What did they say? Mention universities?
Nothing. They haven't mentioned universities. I would have thought it was the same, wouldn't it?
I would have thought so. But anyway, they're now talking about them all going back in one big bang, and I just think it is they haven't tested. Yes, admittedly, a lot of schools have got this what they call it, lateral flow tests.
Yeah, yeah, we
for
have those. Yep, yep.
for teachers. But I would have thought it would have been better to do the primary schools first, and then the secondary second, purely just to see how things pan out, because you're not going to be able to manage the whole school system throughout England in one go.
No.
If the problem. So it really is a question of they should be a little bit more cautious. My other saying is caution is your friend, complacency your enemy in this virus.
Well,
And that's what we need to be thinking about.
the lateral flow testing seems to be working quite well. Yeah, I mean, obviously Tina's testing. It's twice a week she has to test.
Yes.
And it's you text the number. She tested it last night. She's all clear, so it's all good. I mean, that seems to be working well. But it's just that thing going back to kids are spreaders, and they're not the people who actually suffer from it. So you're spreading it to the teachers again, aren't you? We're back into the same situation we were in December, really.
Well, on Sky last night, there was a tragic death of a 51-year-old teacher who died with COVID. No underlying conditions. She was 51, mother. And that very school had 30 plus teachers go down with COVID at the same time in one sort of hit. And that was last September. The fact of the matter is that's what can happen. And what you've got to understand is that the children are the spreaders. And my wife, Marion, actually said to this morning, well, it's all right, very well having the schools go back, but what about the mothers or the parents who are taking them to school and they're all congregating? And you know what'll happen? Somebody say, oh, you got time for a coffee, come back to mine. They shouldn't, but it will happen. And they are all 20s to 40s. And they haven't been vaccinated.
No, so that's right.
You're putting everybody actually on the front line, as I say it, of the virus, of a place where the virus could congregate, could spread very easily. And I'll tell you from a personal perspective, my cousin's husband came up to visit his dying mother a few weeks ago in Birmingham, and they live in Bideford in Devon. And he came up with his brother. Bideford has very low incidences of COVID, as most of the southwest has. They came up, they met another relative and went with that relative to see the mother. And so the mother has since passed away, sadly, so condolences there, but not of COVID. Anyway, the relative turned out to be positive for COVID. And just by a contact with them for no more than an hour, right, they both got infected. My cousin's husband and his brother got infected, and they are still up here at the moment because they're still recovering from it. They don't want to go back down to Devon because obviously there's no cases there, very few cases down in that area of Devon. And that's the problem. And that just shows you how transmissible this new Kent variant is, which is now, by the way, the prevalent variant in the UK. The Kent variant.
Yes, it's the main one, isn't it?
It's very, very much more transmissible than the first wave.
And it is scary because you haven't had a scare, have you, Andy? Because you've been very, very careful. You haven't had a.
Sorry, I have had a scare, and I did get tested some time ago.
Right.
Whereby I woke up in the night with sweats, basically.
Temperature.
Temperature and sweats, and my what I was wearing in bed was t-shirt was wet.
Right.
And that is what actually Jeremy Clarkson, how he first started when he got COVID. So I immediately booked in for a test the next day, and it came back negative. So it wasn't that, and it was just obviously something happened for 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean it's when that alert goes off. Obviously, I had a connection with my dad who suffered from it, who's obviously fine. But you are worrying for 10 days. You're just like thinking anything, a cough, and it's scary. It is really scary. Oh, there you go.
Well, just on that point, I've got close friends of mine as a couple. She has never gone out throughout the pandemic. She has all the food delivered and all that. Her husband's been going to work, and somebody's work went down with it and passed it on to his son, who passed it on to the child, they were used to look after one day a week, right? no symptoms whatsoever. So the child has given that to my friends, to both of the couple. She's in her mid-50s. He's in his, I think, late 50s. They basically have both had COVID, quite bad, but not hospitalisation bad. But here's an interesting for viewers that I read, and I've got one myself. A nebulizer does help, right?
Really?
Yes. And I asked her about it. Was it she bought a nebulizer as soon as she knew she was positive and had some symptoms, and she's been using it, the nebulizer, throughout the COVID, and it really did help her breathing, helped with relieve the cough, and also I didn't know this symptom she talked about. She had a burning sensation in her lungs,
Oh,
right, and it helped with that as well. And she used the nebulizer throughout. I bought another one for my son, just in case he gets it, for about £45 on Amazon. So little tip there for viewers, any viewers, that nebulizers may help. This is not medical advice, so I'm just saying.
He's not a doctor, everybody. He's not a doctor.
I'm not a doctor. But it's something that I've read about in the first wave that to help alleviate the breathing. And if you think about it, it's something that asthma sufferers have done when they've had problems. They had to go to hospital, and they go on a nebulizer, which that's oxygen pumped in.
Okay.
These are where a little machine that basically is in the room, you plug it in, and it takes air out of the atmosphere and then pumps it into either a breathing tube, a device, or a mask. So just a very interesting there. So
yeah, that's very good. That is.
So just a little tip there. Some tips. I'm not saying it's a cure or anything like that, but it can help relieve symptoms. And if you think about the logic, that's what they've been doing with asthma sufferers for years.
That's very true. You haven't had the jab yet, have you? Have you had the jab yet? The vaccine?
Actually, I have. I've actually had the jab.
Oh, you have? Oh, okay.
Yeah. My wife and I were fortunate to be called, because they are calling over 60. I'm 62 very soon, right? They are.
Well, no, there's a few people over 60 who are having it right now, so yes. It's really good.
And my friends of mine have just had it as well.
But the research that obviously that we just talked about in the headlines was research led by the Public Health Scotland found, I'm just reading this now, found in the 4th week after the first dose, hospitalizations were reduced by 85% for the AstraZeneca and 94% for the Pfizer and 85% for the AstraZeneca, which that's what we really want, isn't it? I don't think we'll ever cure this, will we? It's just about keeping people out of the hospital and keeping them alive to get through this, which is hopefully will just come in a few years' time, will just be a flu virus as such.
Well, it was interesting talking to my friend about this burning sensation. It just goes to show that where people, unfortunately, have been saying this is just another flu. It is not another flu. This is a respiratory disease. Very dangerous, and it does damage your lungs if it gets a grip. So,
but if the vaccine reduces the hospitalisation, then it's all good. That's the most important thing, really. I think it's to get it into everybody.
Way out, and congratulations to the government on that particular point. I will.
Whoa! What was that? Sorry, congratulations to the governments.
Yes, on this aspect. Sadly,
on this aspect,
it's but unfortunately we're now at 120,000 deaths, which is not great, and it's a tragedy, and it didn't have to be that way. And still, our biggest fear now is unfortunately some of the data I've read about the South African variant is that the AstraZeneca vaccine isn't quite as good in dealing with the South African variant, and that's one that's concerning the government. Thankfully, there aren't that many cases.
No,
but
I think they've got it quite down, haven't they?
Yeah, but as long as we do not have control of our borders enough, like Scotland, for instance, is 100% quarantine for everybody coming to Scotland, we should be the same. But we're not. And really, this has been the problem from day one, as I've been saying on this program about it. The borders have been the key from day one. They haven't been controlled. They weren't controlled. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. And they're still not being controlled effectively enough. I mean, we are now talking in France with I think France, last time I checked, was something like about 80,000 deaths. They have got curfews 6 till 6. Curfew.
Why is it that we've? I mean, what is it with our borders? There must be a reason why we're not closing them down completely.
It's not just the borders. It's a general laissez-faire attitude to the to enforcement, and I think it stems from a prime minister who's very libertarian, right?
Right, okay.
And obviously the civil liberties groups are playing this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, in the middle of a global pandemic, you can't afford to be that way. Yes, I understand about civil liberties. Look, I'm like most people sitting in lockdown since Boxing Day. So here we are. Where are we? 22nd of February, and
Yeah.
I've got probably another month of this at least. The fact of the matter is without enforcement, you've got a pandemic that's run rife through the country. For instance, give you an example: the Kent variant was discovered in September. They didn't take any action, and the Kent variant went through the country like wildfire. Yeah. And that was all through the schools, the universities and all that. And it became a problem. So, everybody's saying, oh, they didn't know what they're dealing with. What they should have done was what Tobias Elwood, MP, who has been to Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst as an officer and trained in leadership skills and decisions under duress, which is what our great army officers get taught. We didn't bring in the military to take command and control. And even now, we have every minister you can think of, or even I never have heard of, coming on TV saying things that aren't always the same throughout the cabinet. Yeah. And this has been a problem from the outset. Mixed messaging, and it's confused people. You've seen the news. I mean, the media obviously plays it up a little bit, whereby the one minister said one thing and another minister's come on and contradicted that. It's just that, why haven't we had one central mouthpiece for the government? For instance, Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, has been really the single mouthpiece for Scotland. We've had all the ministers on, all different ministers talking about it, who really have no experience whatsoever. We've had a pensions minister on there talking about it, right? Yes, I'm sure they've had a briefing, but they're not going to have details. And then the likes of Piers Morgan start nailing down on a detail that they know they don't have the answer to, and then there we are. But that's where the problems have arisen. No single command and control, and no single structure for messaging to the public. Instead, we've had all the different ministers, right? I don't know how many ministers are, probably 20 at least.
Yeah, they are all over the news, aren't they? It is ridiculous. Just moving on to business for a second, because obviously we've got the budget that's coming up in the next week or so, and people are still crying out for support for self-employed and support for businesses. Do you feel that they're going to use the excuse of, because they're coming out of lockdown now and the vaccine's being rolled out, that they're not going to continue with the support? Is the furlough going to continue? I mean, if you were in a position, would you still be supporting all the businesses self-employed?
When is the budget?
It's I think it's the 8th of March. Is it? It's the 6th or the 8th of March.
Okay. Well, look, furlough technically ends on the 31st of March, along with lots of other schemes.
Yeah.
Right. Like, for instance, the latest date for applying for a bounce back loan it ends on the 31st of March. So I would guess that's the date everybody's looking towards going with. Look, everybody's saying they want more support. I agree with that. But, when you look at the figures, they're absolutely staggering amounts of money has been spent in support. So the answer is that, personally, I actually think they've got it wrong about the way they're going with the schools first. It should have been opening businesses first, right? And schools later. Schools, everybody's saying, schools, everybody's keep going on schools and the children. No, the children can afford to lose a year out of their lives of education and make it up, right? Very, very easily. It is not that crucial, in my opinion. All of this is my opinion, obviously. Right on here, and some of the data I read. But the fact of the matter is, why on earth are we actually gambling with the schools? Because you've got the highest concentration of people ever with the schools and the parents and the teachers, right? And we're going to go for a gamble, right? Which could go either way. Nobody really knows, right? Yeah, yes, cases are falling. We know that, but still, we have got hundreds of deaths per day and over 10,000 cases, new cases per day.
Yeah, it's still a high rate, isn't it?
Very, very high. And people say, oh, that's because we're testing more. Well, I don't buy into that entirely, right? Yes, that is a factor. But you look about what happened when we came out of the last lockdown, which testing was in place, which was July last year. We were talking, we had 600 cases a day, new cases a day, and a handful of deaths. We are still talking about, at the moment, 10,000 new cases a day and several hundred deaths, right? So it's a concern. It must be concerned. And I would say to the government, to Boris Johnson, stop thinking about the media and the headlines. And this, all the problem is because Boris Johnson is a journalist himself. The whole of Number 10 is run by the media or ex-media or media people, right? Instead of serious leaders, military leaders, also Chris Whitty. I know there's a dispute there with Chris Whitty about what's going to happen, but we should be opening business first. Less risk.
Well, it is really. You know, it is. Hello, Grant.
Most businesses that are opening. I Grant. Most businesses that are open are all COVID safe now. Most businesses. You know, all the businesses I deal with, they all operate COVID safe policies. Some of them are even doing lateral flow tests themselves on their employees. So, you know, it's there. But what we're talking about testing the teachers. Are we going to be testing the pupils?
Well, no, there's none of that going on. I can guarantee that. No.
Another question, Matt. Are the schools enforcing masks now in all areas of the schools? Well,
not in the primaries now.
Right. Well, now here we have a situation whereby we've got the Kent variant, the prevalent Kent variant, highly transmissible. I've just cited an example where my cousin's husband and brother just caught it very easily. Right. Both of them caught it, not just one. Both of them caught it. Right. And we're not even enforcing masks in schools. Crazy. Madness. One thing I knew from the SARS pandemic, masks were the key. Both for people infected and others. And if both people, there's a report out there by, I think, a German scientist, or there's, I think, Scandinavia somewhere, where they actually did a lot of tests on this, where both people had masks on and they had 80% protection. So, again, back to masks. You know,
masks it's going back. We need to go back to where we began with. The schools are still, I think it's wrong. But we won't go any further than this because we've been on it for 20 minutes. Yes. So, Grant, hello. How are you? You all right?
All right, buddy. Yeah, you?
Yeah, all good. We're just going to move on from that because we've talked about, obviously, Boris Johnson, his statement later on today in the Commons and on the news at 7 o'clock this evening. So we've touched base on that, but we're going to do something else now, which is the Boeing 777. How would you like to be on a plane and then see this out of your window? This is actually happened over the weekend. Boeing have now grounded all their planes, which have got this engine on them, which is just terrifying. Now, this is weird because the footage of this was taken on the ground and put on social media. Here's one of the footage, and TikTok and all that, before there was actually any news reports of it, which is really weird. This is the actual news report on BBC.
Right.
Can you hear her talking?
No.
Okay. So I thought you could hear her audio on that. But they're talking about what this woman was actually inside the plane at the time.
Right.
And but there's chunks, as you can see here. There are chunks that have fallen on the ground. This guy's talking about a massive ring of the front of the engine that hit his car and hit his house. There it is. That's the coupling at the front of the engine.
Do you know what? This is really weird because I was on a
You
plane.
were in the emergency, weren't you? Landing.
I was on a 777,
Yeah.
and we had engine failure when I was
Really?
on my way to New Zealand. Yeah, and it was the same engine. They're the biggest engines on any passenger plane, aren't they?
That's
Those
correct.
things?
Yeah, they are. They're
Yeah.
absolutely huge.
They're massive, and so we took off. We heard a bit of a bang, and it was everybody, all the stewardesses and everything started running around. The captain came over, and that we stopped climbing. We stopped at about 10,000 feet, and
Right.
just went round and round in a circle for about an hour. And the captain basically came over on the announcement, just said, "Everybody stay in their seats. We've had a bit of an issue with one of the engines, and we're going to have to land."
Yeah.
And it was Qatar airport. It was we transferred at Qatar,
All right.
and so we spent an hour in the air. One of the scariest hours of my life, I have to tell you.
Don't they want to get it down fast? You think you want to land quickly, wouldn't you? If you got engine failure.
What they wanted to do, they had to jettison all the fuel.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So that's and that's why it took so long. They kept telling us it was going to be 15 minutes. 15 minutes. They did that over and over again. What was really scary was that you could tell that the stewardesses and were all shitting it.
Oh no, that's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah,
because I always rely on them to keep me calm.
And so nobody really knew what was going on. Anyway, long story short, we couldn't see out. We were in the middle. We were actually flying. What do they call it? Like, we had one of these booth things, like in the.
Oh right.
So we couldn't see out the window or anything like that. It was like,
well, you wouldn't want to see that, would you? Looking out the window. That's just.
You were flying business class, Grant, weren't you?
Say it again.
Business class, you were flying.
Yeah. And they said, so the disappointing thing was they wouldn't serve us any champagne or anything.
That's terrible.
Grant, can I ask a question? Do you know it was the same engine as yours?
Yeah, it was the same engine. Yeah.
Pratt and Whitney.
What they said to us was
not Rolls Royce.
No,
just so
not Rolls Royce.
I don't. It was that one. It was they're absolutely. That doesn't really demonstrate how big that thing is. That thing is immense.
See the ring here, right? If I just move the video forward slightly.
Yeah, there you go. That's how big
that's
it is.
the ring.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
And when we landed, the captain came on and he said, "Just to let you know, when we land, don't be alarmed. They've closed the runway. There's going to be fire engines and ambulances everywhere." we landed.
Not fun, is it?
And when we got out, we looked at the engine, and there was a massive hole in it. There was a massive hole in the engine, and if you'll probably be able to find it somewhere. It made the papers in New Zealand because we were flying to New Zealand, and it was a big. So whether that it looked like something had gone through it, like a sort of. A bird or something like that, maybe, I don't know, but although birds don't do that, do they?
No,
so whether it's the same issue, but really scary.
It looks like there is. I mean, they've grounded 65 777s, so it's there's obviously a major issue. But as we say, it's not a Rolls Royce engine, so it's fine. That's what they should have been using in those. Did you know this is weird because I know somebody who works at Rolls Royce. That they track their engines everywhere in the world in real time. So if there's a fault with them, it doesn't matter what plane or wherever it is, they know back at the head. Is it Derby, their head office?
Derby,
yeah. They've got a system there that monitors every single active engine all the time, so they know what's going on. That just blows my mind when I think how that is. That's just brilliant. So anyway, end of the show. That's it. But we're going to just quickly talk about Wednesday. We have Russ Bradley on here. Can't say who he works for. I was told off for saying that last week. But he's an environmental manager for the electric car department. That's the easiest thing to say. And he'll be on Wednesday to talk about that, about everything about electric cars and the future of battery and the safety of the batteries and how they get rid of the batteries and all that. So he will be here on Wednesday. So please join us for that. It's going to be a good show. And also, I have resolved the mic problem. I've bought a brand new microphone that I was hoping it was going to be delivered during the show, actually. The brand new Shure SM7V. Look it up. It's outstanding, and it will cut out no more issues with hiss or buzzing. I can see you all worried about that. And
Your mic
glad
sounds
that was
perfect, though, mate.
It does
it's really
today.
well spent.
Well, it is. It's also required for DAB broadcasts, but that's another story. That's another story. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Andy, it's been a pleasure for 20 minutes. It was just like the Monday night pub slot. And Grant, it was great that you joined us.
Hopefully we'll be back to that in the
We'll be back in July.
July. Yeah.
Grant's going to get the rounding.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he's saying. Okay, then. Have a good one. We'll see you all on Wednesday. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.